So like many of you, I saw the Fallout TV show. I loved it, and I wanted to play a Fallout game. Now, I've played a lot of Fallout 3, New Vegas, 4, even the originals, but 76 for many of us is a blind spot. Now, for me, I've dipped into every single major update for the game since it came out, especially because this Fallout itch I'm getting from the TV show happens to me like every month, except this time it's really bad because I actually had something from Fallout to attach myself to, so it's doubly bad. Anyway, I'm always looking for a new Fallout experience, and it seems like many of you are, because I received so many tweets and so many requests to check out 76 again in more of an all-encompassing re-review of the game and the state it's in 2024. And since I keep up with things, I thought this was a great idea. Also, seeing the massive surge of brand new players into Fallout 76 has people raising their eyebrows. Is it really better than it's ever been before? And truth is, while I've done my intermittent updates and you'd think I have a really sour opinion on the game, I would understand that. But when you look at it collectively, I'll just say at the top that 76 is not the game it was in 2018. I was there, like many of you, tearing this thing down, saying how bad it was. I stuck with it even through covering things like potentially adding Team Deathmatch to Fallout 76. They really found their way beginning with Wastelanders, and the game has been steadily climbing upward since then with occasional dips here or there. It's in a great state now, and if you haven't played Fallout 76 since its launch or just looked at it at launch and laughed at it, maybe this video will convince you to give it a shot. We'll talk about that. The other reason I thought it was great to talk about it now is we're seeing a touch of revisionist history ongoing now. I'm seeing outlets like Insider Gaming posting articles and then deleting them. G-Man lives. I'm not hating on him. I love his videos. He is being consistent here while some people thought he wasn't. His 76 review did say that people were being hyperbolic, and he's just saying right now, look at this. It's always been good. I would humbly disagree with that and say it's always been bad and it's getting better, but also we're away from other things like the canvas bag debacle. We're away from
16 times the detail.
$80 plastic Nuka-Cola rum bottles, a battle royale mode being added and weirdly being like the best thing they put in the game up until that point in time, and so on to give room for forgiveness. So what I did was I started a brand new build. This is the third new character I've done in Fallout 76. I have like a main file that was on PS4 where I played almost 200 hours. I did a new build on PC, starting from scratch at level 1. And this is my first time doing a preset custom build recommended by Bethesda. So this is a review from the new player angle, as well as covering all of the new additions to the game throughout the year. So let's get started. Right upon leaving Vault 76, you're actually going to be asked what loadout you want to go with. And Bethesda recommends that you start off at level 20 and gives you a complete preset loadout from your perk cards to the weapons you carry, everything. And it does make the starting player experience infinitely better. The perk card system has always ruled in my opinion. Even in my original 76 review, I still praised it, and to this day, I do. I think you could even argue that Fallout 76 has the most build crafting of any modern Fallout game when you account for perk cards, legendary perks, legendary weapons, and mutations. Not only that, but one thing that's been consistent in 76 is its map. It's always been a joy to go around and explore, and while it may not have 16 times the detail, literally, I think it's a vibrant world with a lot of things that are going to pique your interest and some pretty interesting quests now that actual NPCs are on the map. Now, the reason Bethesda Game Studios decided to make everyone level 20 to start things off and give you weapons, ammunition, stim packs, rataways, all that stuff to start off is arguably the biggest problem in Fallout 76 next to its performance, which many people focused on at launch, was actually the game's balancing. That's why now when you hop in the game, you still have the hunger, thirst meters, you still want to rest, but these aren't necessary anymore. You used to get massive debuffs when your character was hungry or thirsty, and so oftentimes sessions in 76 would turn into you doing dailies or weekly challenges to get stuff to survive and barely exploring the map, but instead spending so much time mining materials, mining resources to be able to just survive and not be in the negative constantly. You would also be scavenging for things like ammunition. You'd be scavenging for healing supplies. You would always be short on something, and it made playing the game a little tedious in my opinion. Something that Bethesda eventually righted the wrong on in more ways than one. But this was one of the major ways of getting the new player experience to a level where it should be, which is just overloading you with resources off the bat to kind of let you go off in any direction you want. It does destabilize a bit of the BGS feel of starting off with just a 10mm pistol or starting off with a pipe pistol and building up from there. Instead, I'm starting off with a tactical automatic combat rifle. That can be a little sour if you want to be nitpicky, but I think it ultimately leads to a much better experience starting off 76. Now, exploring this world, while the map is fantastic, a lot of these locations are tied down by quests. That means that you're going to run into some areas with a lot of nameless NPCs, unfortunately, which I do think strips away a lot from the world. There are named NPCs, but you got to remember, this game started off with none. So most of the newly added ones are tied to quests because they've been in big content additions. This may change down the line because one of the future updates for Fallout 76 coming out soon is expanding the base game map. It'll actually be the first part of the entire base game experience that's going to be built in mind with Wastelanders already being there. So I'm keen to see what happens there. But right now, what you're going to do is run into a lot of these areas and they'll either be shooting galleries or weirdly hollow until you realize that they're tied to a quest and you're going to go back there much later. That also can lead to inconsistency, making you not want to explore. Like, I wiped out this free radical base, which is tied to the Wastelanders quest line, and then I got to that point in the Wastelanders quest line, so I went there again, and everyone was all cool with it. Yeah, it's an online game. There's not going to be that level of choice and consequence in your world that's going to just dramatically change how your interaction with an entire faction goes. But for those of you looking for immersion qualities, there are things like that that are just not simply going to pass because it's an online game. Still, the difference is now 76 used to be about chasing ghosts. Someone died. What happened here? Those quests are more interesting now because they're not the core of the game. They are more additive. The main story about 76 is leaving the vault on Reclamation Day and going out into the wasteland and trying to establish what this world will be like moving forward, as we've seen in things like the Fallout TV show even. That means base building is a big part of it. We'll talk about that in just a second. But for the story itself, a lot of locations that used to be empty and just involving chasing down holotapes and listening to recordings and getting to your next quest step instead are now tied to NPCs. There are going to be NPCs populating locations that there used to be none. Like the responders, when you actually go and find the responders, they are actually there, which is great to see. You can actually meet the Overseer from Vault 76 now. She's not just this voice on the radio. So no longer is the part of the game that should have been additive the core. It is truly additive, and it's about the NPCs now. So it's much better in the questing department. And the main story I always liked in 76 in the sense that the way they play with the Enclave here, as my personal favorite faction in Fallout, I really like. So I think that the main story in 76 may be more interesting to you than you give it credit for. I mentioned earlier, base building is a big part of this game, and yes, it is. You build bases with the camp. It's big, it's necessary, and you're not really going to avoid it. You can also build your own vault in this game if you really get into it. That's a super interesting part of the game. But yeah, this is going to be a lot like what you saw in Fallout 4 if you haven't played Fallout 76 ever or in a while. You're going to be gathering items, breaking them down into materials, storing them in your stash. Stash limit, no longer a problem in this game anymore. It's not like how it was at launch where 76 had like 40 pounds worth of space and you were always getting rid of stuff. That is a thing of the past now. Just like in Fallout 4, you'll gather materials, throw them into your stash. You'll probably make use of them before anything fills up anyway. So you don't have to worry about storage limits at all. But you're going to be breaking down weapons as well because you're going to get your best weapon upgrades by doing that. So things like scope, different sights, different magazines. It's all kind of randomized, and this game does have decent unique loot, as do most BGS games. Starfield, I'm looking at you. But it does lean heavily on legendary items, and these are all role dependent. Now, you can re-roll legendary items with the Purveyor, but this is something in the game that you should just be aware of, that a lot of the best loot is legendary 3-star items. It's not like how in your traditional BGS game was where, oh, I found this really unique item with a unique skin on it. I love this thing. I have an attachment to it. Those are unfortunately not the greatest items to use. That's just how the game is built. Now, you'll spend a lot of time in this camp because you're going to want to get resources to start crafting your own ammo. You can start crafting your own armor, upgrading that armor. You can upgrade everything in the game, as I'm sure you already put together. But also, the community is great, and sometimes they'll hook you up. There will be donation boxes around the map that you can find just resources in, but sometimes players will outright stop you and give you tons of ammo, tons of healing items, and just make your new player experience pretty great. And I have to say that this for some people is a bad thing. Not the community being great, but just giving you a ton of items right off the bat. It makes Fallout 76 an already easy game even easier, but the community is really sweet, and there are ways Bethesda sort of massages that where it benefits you and you don't have to interact with people. Like, you can go into a casual team, join that, and you'll get intelligence bonuses, which leads to more XP gains. You'll get different multipliers just by playing online in a group, and that'll lead to people collaborating more. Sometimes I just join a casuals team and then that's it. Like, I don't interact with anybody, but the community here is great. That is not some type of myth Todd Howard and his team are spreading. It truly is a fantastic community. What makes it even better is one Tamriel is what I like to call it, because that was the update in Elder Scrolls Online that made it where if you're level 100 and I'm level 25, you'll fight enemies that are level 100, I'll fight enemies that are level 25, and we could play the game together. And so they do that here. I just call it one Wasteland usually too, but the idea is that the levels of enemies scale to you, so it doesn't matter if your friend has a ton of experience and you have none, you can play together. It doesn't matter if I'm in like a casuals team online and someone's level 200 or something like that and I'm level 10. You can play together, and that is another great addition that they have made in the game's last couple of years. Now, I have said a lot of positive things compared to maybe some prior 76 videos. You may have even watched those prior 76 videos, so you've seen some of this stuff. Problems still exist, and I'm not talking design-wise, like bugs still exist. There was one video, I think I did it last year, where I sat down to play 76, and I was actually trying to be really nice about the game, and yeah, like the AI broke on me 3 times in the video. So Scorched AI in particular is still brutal. I don't know what's going on. Every other part of the game is fine. The Blood Eagles, fine. Super Mutants, fine. The Liberators, fine. Like everything attacks me as it should, operates as it should, but the Scorched are still sometimes walking backwards, freezing in place. I don't know what's wrong with the Scorched AI, but it's still remarkably terrible. And it's unfortunate because I think the Scorched are one of the cool parts of the core main story of 76 that I'll let you discover for yourself. Draw distance in this game still leaves a lot to be desired. Like I'll just see buildings loading in right in front of me. I'm usually not nitpicky on that if it's happening in the distance, but this is pretty close up and I'm on PC, so I still think it's absolutely worth calling out. And you'll just get random things like you'll see in the background of this clip here, NPCs randomly dying while I'm talking to someone. And fortunately, this is not a thing that ruined any quest lines, but yeah, random things happen in 76. It is still kind of a buggy game. It's just not as in your face as it used to be. That's for sure. It's far more stable. I don't experience crashes anymore. I don't get booted out of servers ever, even with this massive spike in players. No server boots, so that's always great to see. The other thing is monetization is still extremely prevalent and definitely preys on the extremely dedicated Fallout 76 player, and I'm not going to lighten up on that, unfortunately. I'm talking about your Battle Pass, your Atomic Shop, and your subscription service trifecta. It's pretty ridiculous how monetized this game is, but none of the content that has come out that I've talked about and I'm about to talk about has been something you've had to pay for. It is something I'm wondering how it would go for Bethesda with this resurgence, if they could do better, bigger content like Wastelanders, if they charged for it. I don't know. I don't want to invite in any more problems where we're getting charged for worse. But yeah, there's still a ton of monetization in this game. Stuff like Fallout 76 items like the Ghouls outfit is tied to the Fallout First subscription. Things like certain parts of the stash box tied to the 76 subscription service. A new player experience at level 20 will give you 2,500 atoms, so you can typically go into the Atomic Shop and buy a few things for yourself before new stuff is added that you may end up wanting. So you do get a couple of freebies there. The Battle Pass gradually scales up, although recurrent content is a little bit of a sore spot for 76. So one way or another, they're going to eventually try to get you to pay some money, but it's not something you have to do. It's just something you should be aware of. A lot of the content that you will go back in as a repeatable is the dailies, weeklies, and events. Events in the game are pretty solid. I actually enjoy some of the new ones they added. Like I did a new one for Nuka World on tour that I really enjoyed, and they still kept one of those in there. It was like this bank robbery thing involving a bunch of different bots, and it was a ton of fun. The rewards here are also great, albeit randomized, but they've done a good job making sure you're guaranteed certain loot drops, so you're not just rerunning and waiting for the events to start up again and again and again. It can be a little frustrating, so they have fixed loot drops in that manner. Now let's talk about some of the major content additions to the game. The best one, in my opinion, was in 2020 with Wastelanders. This is when the game came to Steam and saw its first turnaround and actually managed to crawl its way at that point to mostly positive on Steam. So Wastelanders is a questline where, you guessed it, Wastelanders have arrived to the Wasteland. The reason being is there is apparently a treasure locked away in a vault and people are here to investigate that. So introducing the Settlers and the Raiders. Not the most inspiring faction groups, but yeah, you have your good guys and your bad guys, and you can get a good ending or a bad ending in this. The quest does have choices. In fact, as you'll see as I'm questing around here, there are a lot of options on how you can approach things. You can talk to certain people, find alternative solutions. You can go aggro, you can befriend people. They even added allies in this expansion, which meant that you could get basically companions in this game. My favorite one in particular is a character that was up in space during the Great War and then landed on Earth after the Great War occurred and woke up to a world completely destroyed, and they were terrified. It's a beautiful premise for a Fallout companion. I absolutely love it, and I think they did a great job with this here. So there are actually great characters here, and they do continue to add allies, but to me personally, outside of some of the Brotherhood of Steel stuff we're talking about here, they haven't doubled down and added meaningful characters like that in quite some time. Again, to me, Wastelanders is the core. Wastelanders was not only the turning point, but the best thing they've done for the game thus far. I'm hoping that they can swing big like Wastelanders again, especially now that we have a player base of like 70,000 recurrent players daily. Like, that's awesome. Hopefully that stays around that area or a little bit lower, and that they can do something big with that, because to me, Wastelanders is that kind of experience that would keep me invested, would keep me excited about 76, because it's the one part of the game I have been consistently positive about since its launch. The problem was, I think, if I were to wager a guess, was at this point in 76's lifespan, Wastelanders signified a turnaround, maybe for the player base, but I don't know if monetarily it was, because after this is when Bethesda started to have really spaced out content drops. So right now it's a lot, and it's actually overwhelming. You have so much to go through, and it is pretty exciting. But then there was Steel Dawn and Steel Rain. This was a 2-part quest line featuring the Brotherhood of Steel, who had also returned to the Wasteland of Appalachia. And both these quest lines are kind of short. Combined, it's much better, but when you were getting these in different windows of the year, you would come back to 76 for like 3 to 6 hours tops, and then move back on to the other games you were playing. Like, there was nothing really keeping you engaged for a long period of time. But now together, it's a lot better. Still, this is why some people continue to complain about 76 with its recurrent updates, while if you're joining in as a new player, you're wondering what the problem was at all, because now it's all together here. But this is where things were starting to feel stretched thin, and they did a similar thing with Expeditions, which we'll talk about next, and especially with Atlantic City, where they did the Expedition for Atlantic City and then America's Playground, where, as I said in my review of that update, it would have been much better, much more significant, and much more of a statement if they did that all together. But since there's a bit of a shortage of content for 76 because of the team size, I'm guessing, they had to split things up. And so you see that here with Steel Dawn and Steel Rain. Still, it's great to see the Brotherhood of Steel here. It's great to get more PvE questline content, especially at that point in the game. I wouldn't say it's as good as Wastelanders, but I still like it enough where when you have that attached to Wastelanders, attached to the main story, it's definitely worth experiencing. I mentioned Expeditions. This is basically the Fallout 76 equivalent of a raid. So this is the one time you get to leave the Appalachia and go do something else somewhere. The first expedition was the Pit, which I absolutely tore apart. Not just because it was completely buggy and broken, bringing me back to the heyday of Fallout 76's launch, but also I thought it did not capitalize on anything it set out to do, which is bringing you to a new location, and it turned into just a horde mode with really bad resource balancing, which, again, as I mentioned now, is much better. But this is why I wasn't positive on it then, versus when you play it, you may enjoy it more. So the Pit, it's great to be back, especially at this point in the timeline. You get to see the Pit before Fallout 3's events, so that's really cool. But this is, again, a raid where you have to come in super prepared, where you can be of any level, but it's good to go in with a team, and it's definitely good to go in completely kitted out with a ton of resources. Like, these shooting galleries will go on for a long time, and you can end up running out while you're in there, and it's not a fun situation to be in, because you can't just dip out and go craft stuff. And then there's Atlantic City, which visually is one of the best things Fallout 76 has done. I always thought the art direction for 76 has been great. That's why the world was so inviting and why I wanted to stay there for so long. 76 really does have that wonderful art direction, and you see that especially here in Atlantic City with its very noir vibe to it. Awesome stuff. But again, the problem with Expeditions is the same it's always been, is you have these areas to go to and there's shooting galleries, and when you're leaving the map, the idea is this could be more. What if we put questing content here and these were open explorable areas? And it seemed like Bethesda had the same idea. So they went ahead and did America's Playground, which was apparently making Atlantic City this new explorable area with a quest line attached to it. The problem is it was just the same exact expedition map, which is fine to reuse, but no additional side locations, no additional ways to connect these areas. Literally, you would just go through like a sewer grate and pop out somewhere else in the map. It was really haphazard, janky, disconnected, and it led to the same problem I mentioned with the base game of 76, which is if I wandered off the beaten path, it wasn't really rewarding, which is what BGS games do so well, because this area wasn't going to be used until the quest deemed it necessary. And so you would just follow the quest line. And I didn't think it was particularly that fantastic. You're investigating this new chem called the Devil's Blood and how it's coming from Atlantic City. And so you're leaving Appalachia to check that out. I think it's the groundwork for something great. I think the idea of leaving Appalachia and going somewhere else and questing there is exactly what we all wanted from 76 in the first place. I just think some added environments to explore, like there aren't even map markers to lead you to new areas. Like there's not even that. So it's very strictly quest driven. I think if they could expand that a little bit more, you can get something really good here and get 76 to where it always needed to be. So that leaves us at the end of all of the major content drops. Of course, there are things like Nuclear Winter, which they have now removed from the game. They've removed a lot from the game, but these were like the major content beats for the most part. And that leaves us with the future. 76 is going to be expanding its map, as I said earlier, and I'm curious to see what it is like now with everything that they're aware of the game being considered as they develop this. And it's the first time ever the map will be expanding, so I think it could be exciting. New cryptids, new locations. I'm cautiously optimistic about that update, but here's where I would say you should lie with 76 moving forward if you're enjoying it. Right now, in the game's current state, and this can change, the game has never, as someone who's played the game since launch, okay, I've played every single major update, and outside of Wastelanders, this game has never over-delivered on my expectations. It always falls right beneath it, or it's just off in some area, and it's upsetting because nobody more than me wants to cheer for this game. But if you keep that in mind and treat it as such, you may enjoy it better than me. As someone who's gone through almost 6 years with this game and its ups and downs, it's a little tougher for me to come out the gate and be like, it's great, like some other YouTubers I'm sure will do, playing the game and being like, oh, it's fantastic now, actually, because they haven't been through all of those ups and downs. They just get to see the end result. So if I come across a little more negative about it, that's why. But Too Long Didn't Read. Is 76 worth the download? I think, yeah, go ahead and give it a try. Is it going to replace Fallout 3 and New Vegas for you if you love those games? I don't think so. It doesn't provide you the traditional Fallout experience. It's a little more Fallout 4-like with a co-op element. And if that sounds cool to you, then go play it. Just know that there's a little bit less wandering off the beaten path, and most of the content is driven through questing rather than that wandering. You can still wander and find things and loot stuff. That's cool, but most times they'll feel hollow until you realize there's a quest attached to it. If you can get down with that, 76 is definitely in the best state it's been in a long while, and you should give it a look. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I leave it to you. What do you think about Fallout 76 if you're playing it? Fire away down below. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.